Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Box Office Talk. This is the show where I break down what happened at the box office, see if my predictions for the top 5 are correct, then make predictions for next week's top 5. So let's get right on into it. Last week, I predicted that number 1 would be Avatar: The Way of Water, number 2 would be Mothregan, number 3 would be Missing, number 4 would be Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, and number 5 would be A Man Called Otto. And I got only 2 out of 5 of my predictions right for this weekend because, certain movies, 2, 3, and 4 kind of did a little shuffling around, which was very interesting to say the least. The only person who could have seen this coming is getting a shout out right now. Congratulations for this one. Not sure how you could have predicted this. I mean, I can't think of a way you could have predicted this, just seeing how certain things were holding over well and all that, but still, it's kind of crazy. Whatever, let's just go over what happened in the overall top 10, because number 1 hit a pretty big milestone. Number 1 is Avatar: The Way of Water, once again, making $19 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $597 million. So right now it sits $188 million behind the original film, $102 million behind James Cameron's Titanic, and concerning the year 2022, it is $121 million behind Top Gun: Maverick. And then, of course, the all-time chart, it is still $11 million away until Incredibles 2, so it hasn't really progressed anything domestically. It is still kind of catching up to certain other films, but worldwide it is now sitting at $2,023 million. So it is hit the 2 billion point, which means that this is James Cameron's third film to hit $2 billion. Titanic, Avatar 2, and Zoe Saldana now has been in 4 films that have hit $2 billion. Obviously this, the first Avatar, and Avengers: Infinity War and Endgame. That's kind of amazing, to be honest. That's quite outstanding. Obviously this still needs to catch up to the original film by $676 million, Titanic by $184 million, but now it is the 6th highest grossing film worldwide of all time, ahead of Spider-Man: No Way Home by $113 million, and it only needs $25 million until it outgrosses Avengers: Infinity War and becomes the 5th highest grossing film of all time, the top 5. That is incredible for this movie. I've sung this movie's praises so much at this point. It's just, it continues to amaze me. I'm just so very happy to see this every single time. Obviously it's going to outgross Infinity War by next weekend. I would love to see how much farther it can go. Number 2 is Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, which actually held over really well and bounced back up to the number 2 spot, making $11 million, adding to a domestic total of $113 million. Domestically, it is $2 million over Mr. Peabody and Sherman now, and now needs $13 million until it outgrosses B movie with the hold that it's had. This is looking very likely, obviously. I'm not sure if it'll be exactly next weekend, but, pretty safe to assume that, or the weekend after. It still needs $36 million until it outgrosses the first movie, and worldwide, obviously, still needs $270 million to do that. Worldwide, as I keep saying, looks a little bit less likely, but domestically, considering how well it's held over, we could be seeing it finally outgross the first movie, which would be pretty amazing. And I know it comes out in February in the UK, or at least I've seen Florence Pugh promote that's its release date, so the worldwide numbers for sure will probably get a boost there. Speaking of which, it is now sitting at $284 million worldwide, so $34 million over The Bad Guys, and now it needs $2 million until Turbo and $3 million until B movie. But just because Puss in Boots bounced back up a bit does not mean that number 3, Mothregan, is having a rough time. Obviously it is still doing very well. It made $9.8 million. That adds to a domestic total of $61 million, so it has outgrossed Tooth Fairy by $1 million. It is now $3 million away from The Purge 1, Invisible Man, and Halloween Ends, which, if you can outgross Halloween Ends, the final chapter of the epic Laurie Strode, Michael Myers saga, then, you're in pretty good hands. As far as Atomic Monster, the other production company involved with this, it still needs to catch up to The Conjuring: The Devil Made Me Do It by $4 million. Worldwide, it has now jumped up to $112 million, so it's outgrossed another slew of Blumhouse films that I will be listing off right now. $21 million over The First Purge, not the prequel, the first movie, $7 million over Halloween Ends, $19 million over BlacKkKlansman, $17 million over Truth or Dare, $14 million over The Visit, $9 million over The First Ouija, $1 million over Purge Anarchy, $22 million over The Marked Ones, Paranormal Activity that is, it's a couple $100,000 over Tooth Fairy, and $13 million over Insidious, and just needs $6 million until it outgrosses The Purge election year. another batch of Blumhouse releases that it has outgrossed. Very happy to see this, obviously. For Atomic Monster, it still needs 11 million until it outgrosses The Curse of La Llorona, but obviously by next weekend we'll see this happen. This movie is still doing very well. I think I mentioned it, last weekend and maybe the weekend before, I don't know. And I've also seen it on Twitter. Like, yeah, we are seeing these movies doing well right now, and the ones I'm about to mention after too. This shows like a good, healthy sign for the box office. Like, obviously you have your big sequel now franchise movie Avatar, dominating and making more money than anyone could have ever expected. Even maybe even diehard fans might not be expecting the big boost that this movie has gotten overall. But you also have these other movies that a couple years ago, like 2020, end of 2019, would have, or 2021 would have like flopped, wouldn't have done very well. Now they're kind of like, okay, there is an audience for them. Some people might be sick of being at home watching stuff on streaming, might want to venture out to see other things in the theater, and these are things that were marketed well. So it's just very happy to see. Just because Puss in Boots and Mithrigan are flip-flopping doesn't mean that this is bad at all. And number 4, we have Missing, another one that is doing very well for its debut, making 9.3 million this weekend on a budget of 7 million. So although we don't have a worldwide total right now, it only needs 5 million more until it outgrosses its doubling point for its budget, which is quite amazing. It's definitely going to do that next weekend. It still needs to catch up to the first Searching by 17 million. I will be curious to see if next weekend, if it'll drop off or if it will kind of slowly, gradually get to that point. Nevertheless, this is still very, very good. Obviously, it had a higher debut than when the first Searching came out, because that was kind of like, you had a weekend where it was like a limited release, couple 100,000, and then next weekend, but it was mostly like a word of mouth thing. Like, okay, it was able to gross some money as it kind of went on, but it was nothing too big. So this one, I think it tops the first movie's opening, but not by too much, and in a way where it's like, yeah, this one's just going wide first thing. So either way, it doesn't really matter. It's still doing very well. Number 5, A Man Called Otto, also doing pretty well, making 9.0 million, adding to a domestic total of 23 million. Worldwide, it is sitting at 43 million, so 7 million until it crosses the initial production budget of $50 million. It still needs 57 until it can actually double that, which is, for this show, the indicator of success, unless told otherwise. But it still has a pretty impressive hold, which is pretty surprising. It's not dropping immediately and like making like $100,000, even though it's in the top 10 or top 5, really. It just really warms my heart to see, box office slightly thriving, I guess. Number 6, we have Plane, making 5.2 million, adding to a domestic total of $12 million. Worldwide, it was able to bump up to like 13 million, not really a whole lot. I mentioned last weekend, this movie still has to catch up with one of the director's previous films, the Assault on Precinct 13 remake. 8 million until it does so domestically, 23 million worldwide. So it still has a ways to go, and it still isn't really close to doubling its $25 million budget. It is kind of a shame, even though the title was memed up, and some people have been saying like, it's actually not too bad a movie. It's kind of fun, all things considered. That hasn't really translated well into ticket sales. And I was kind of hoping last weekend, like maybe its second weekend will actually prove that, there is some audience attention here. Some people will want to see more on the second weekend, but not really. But it's kind of the way the cookie crumbles, I guess. Gerard Butler, he's a really cool guy, and he's put out some good movies. He's been in a lot of movies. He definitely has a certain group of fans who will see him no matter what, but he isn't like the biggest name in the world, unfortunately. Moving on to number 7, which was House Party, still not doing the greatest, making 1.7 million. This adds to a domestic total of 5 million at this point. It still needs 14 million until it outgrosses House Party 2 and 3. At this point, it's just not going to do it. It wasn't going to outgross any of these movies when it debuted last weekend with like 3 million or whatever. So moving right along to number 8, which was That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime, the movie Scarlet Bond, a movie that I have obviously just found out about. I'm very happy that this isn't one of those anime releases where it was like, actually it has a pretty big fan base attached to it, and it, bumped its way into the top 5. It's like, no, it just kind of came where you'd expect it to be, making 1.4 million. I'm not sure what the budget is. I'm not even sure if it has any other totals anywhere else, but still, congratulations, you made it. You made some money. At number 9, we have Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, making 1.3 million, adding to a domestic total of $450 million, so still 9 million away until it outgrosses Age of Ultron, looking very less likely at this point, obviously. Worldwide, it is sitting at 830 million and needs 20 million until it outgrosses Thor Ragnarok. Also still looking very unlikely, but hey, I I keep saying it. I don't know why, I sound like a broken record, but, it's tripled its $250 million budget. It's doing very well. It outgrows Thor Love and Thunder. Obviously, it didn't outgrow Multiverse of Madness, but still, if you can outgrow Thor Love and Thunder, which cost about the same, you can't say that about Multiverse of Madness. I'm not sure if it cost about the same. I'm pretty sure the budget was like $200 million. That is still a win, I would say. And finally, closing out the video, number 10 is The Whale, making $1.2 million, adding to a domestic total of $10.7 million, and it still needs $7 million until it outgrows his mother, Darren Aronofsky's previous film. But and I wanted to bring this point up when we get to number 10. It has nothing really to do with The Whale. It seemed like this was like the exact domestic total and like difference from Mother as last weekend. So I was like very confused. And then I did a quick comparison. In case some of you don't know, I'm mostly using like the numbers now, but I did a quick comparison with Box Office Mojo just to see if some things were different. And obviously Avatar: The Way of Water had not hit 2 billion on Box Office Mojo, even though that's like the most reported thing right now is that it definitely has crossed over at this point. But also in Box Office Mojo, it says that like Mithrigan is actually at like 70 million domestically, and Puss in Boots is actually at 120 domestically. So there are some slight differences. So if you are confused, like I was kind of looking at, it really only clicked when I kind of got to number 10, where I was like, wait a second, and I maybe had to like reevaluate some things. This is all just like estimates anyways, it's all kind of like rough totals, you know what I mean? So it doesn't really matter. In this case, I'm probably just going to stick to the main website that I use, which is the numbers. But yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to bring it up just in case some people remembered last weekend. I was like, hey, didn't you say these exact numbers for The Whale as well? And I kind of did. Anyways, now it's time for the fun part, the predictions for next week's top 5. Number 1, I'm going with Avatar: The Way of Water. Number 2, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Number 3, Mithrigan. Number 4, Missing. And number 5, A Man Called Otto. That's right. I don't have any new releases in here. I'm sure, they will make some money, but I just don't really see Women Talking going wide, or Living going slightly wide, or Infinity Pool, or Fear, or Alice Darling maybe going wide, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's just doing that AMC exclusive thing. I just don't see those movies popping up into the top 5 at this point. I feel like this 5 that we have right here is pretty locked on, But anyways, what are your predictions for next week's top 5? Leave them in the comments below. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.